Hey everybody, Qroo here. Welcome to the channel. You know, one of the best ways to improve your Spanish is to learn vocabulary in groups of words or phrases that you can then just pop together to make sentences. There are a lot of different phrases and constructions you can learn, but I've found that the ones that you can start a sentence with are particularly useful. And the one I'm giving you today is a great sentence starter. It's ¿Qué sentido tiene? Plus infinitive. And when I say infinitive, I mean the unconjugated verb. You're just going to be dropping it in. This phrase is often translated into English as, what sense does it make to do something? Or what's the point of doing something? Whatever you're dropping in as an infinitive. Today's lesson was actually inspired by something my wife Linda said to me yesterday. We speak both English and Spanish with each other. And yesterday she said to me in Spanish, ¿Qué sentido tiene comprar llantas nuevas si estás pensando en vender el carro? What's the point of buying new tires if you're thinking of selling the car? I bet you can already guess what the conversation was about, huh? Right after she said it, I thought, ¿Qué sentido tiene plus infinitive might be a really good lesson. So here we are. All right, so take a look at that sentence on the screen. There's a couple things I want to point out about it. In the English, we're using the gerund or the ing ending. I'm talking about what's the point of buying new tires, but in Spanish, we use the infinitive or the unconjugated verb. We just said comprar. You're going to see this a lot when comparing the two languages. In English, we use the ing ending a lot, and in some, but not all circumstances, you're going to see the infinitive used in Spanish. That's actually another great lesson idea, so I'll write that down after. Another thing I want to point out in that sentence is the word used for tire, llanta, llanta. I recently did a video about how Spanish is not uniform when it comes to vocabulary. One country or region may use one particular word for something, and then, you travel to another region, there's a completely different word, or even perhaps the same word has different meanings. Well, this is a great example of that. In Mexico and Colombia and several other countries, llanta is used for the rubber part of the tire, and the metal part, the rim, is actually rin, R-I-N. But in Argentina and Chile, llanta is the rim, and the rubber part is pneumático. I'm sure you could see where that could lead to some confusion at some point, right? All right, I went off on a tangent there, so let's get back to the lesson. We'll be using two constructions today that all begin with the same phrase. ¿Qué sentido tiene? That's our base sentence starter. Our first construction is ¿Qué sentido tiene plus infinitive? That is the unconjugated verb. This is when we say, what sense is it to do something? Or what's the purpose of doing something? That something is whatever we plug into infinitive. Our second construction is for you more advanced folks. It is ¿Qué sentido tiene plus que plus the subjunctive. I know some of my regular viewers are like, geez, Paul, do you ever have a lesson without talking about the subjunctive? You know what? I think I do, but it just comes up so often. I don't know how other people are teaching Spanish without talking about the subjunctive all the time. After that whole llanta, pneumático conversation I just had with you, you might be wondering if the phrase of the day today is actually used everywhere. Are you going to be understood if you use it? Yes, you will. It's pretty universal. That's why I chose it. For you folks who may not know it, tener sentido means to make sense in Spanish. It literally says to have sense. So in English, we make sense, and in Spanish, you have sense. All right, let's take a look at our first construction. ¿Qué sentido tiene plus infinitive? We're just going to be plugging in verbs here. Can't be any easier, right? You don't have to worry about conjugation. Since Linda inspired the video, she agreed to help out with it today, and she's going to give you a few examples of this.
What's the point of continuing to talk about this? ¿Qué sentido tiene seguir hablando de esto?
Let's take a look at that sentence. ¿Qué sentido tiene seguir? We just dropped in seguir. It's in the infinitive. But what may have thrown you off is right after it you see hablando, hablando. And that is the gerund, the ing ending, right? So you're like, okay, I thought Paul said infinitives are used. I said often infinitives are used. Sometimes there is an ing ending. And this is actually a set construction that uses it. So I thought, hey, why don't we talk about that too? So here it is. Seguir plus ing ending means to keep doing something. Sigo hablando de esto. I keep talking about this. Sigo trabajando. I keep working. ¿Por qué sigues quejándote? Why do you keep complaining? Be careful who you say that to, because that one can start an argument.
What's the point of arriving early if no one's there? ¿Qué sentido tiene llegar temprano si nadie está?
Take a look at our sentence. ¿Qué sentido tiene llegar Llegaste to arrive just dropped in our infinitive. Nothing else surprising in there, right?
What's the point in washing the car if it's going to rain? ¿Qué sentido tiene lavar el coche si va a llover?
No surprises here either. We dropped in our infinitive, lavar, to wash, right after tiene. It can't be any easier, right? If you just watch my videos and then you don't actually go use it, you're not likely to remember it. So I really encourage you to just kind of make up your own sentences as the day goes. And, they can be simple. It can be like, you know what? ¿Qué sentido tiene hacer eso? What's the point of doing that? You're really only limited by your own imagination here. All right. So let's go on to our second construction, which is for our more advanced students, or at least those folks who are familiar with how to conjugate the subjunctive. ¿Qué sentido tiene plus que plus subjunctive? This one is useful if you want to be more specific about who is performing the action. So let's compare these two sentences. ¿Qué sentido tiene vender el carro? What sense does it make to sell the car? What's the point of selling the car? And this one, ¿qué sentido tiene que vendas el carro? What sense does it make for you to sell the car? So in our first one, it's just, what sense does it make to sell the car? And our second one, what sense does it make for you to sell the car? You can see that the first one is just easier to use. So if through context you know who you're referring to, try to stick with just the infinitive where possible. For example, you're having a conversation with someone and you're like, quiero vender la casa. I want to sell the house. And the other person just responds, ¿Qué sentido tiene vender la casa? Like, what's the point of selling the house? Or they say, ¿Qué sentido tiene vender la casa si te gusta? What's the point of selling the house if you like it? In that context, those sentences would make perfect sense, so there would be no need to use the construction with the subjunctive. For you folks who are more advanced and you do plan on using the second construction at some point, here's a couple of examples. What's the point of you getting up early if you don't have to work? ¿Qué sentido tiene que te levantes temprano si no tienes que trabajar? Let's take a look at that sentence. We start with our ¿Qué sentido tiene? Like we always do. We have our que because we're going to be using the subjunctive. And our verb here is levantarse, which means to get up, and it is conjugated in the subjunctive mood. What's the point of Maria looking for a job if she doesn't have time to work? ¿Qué sentido tiene que María busque trabajo si no tiene tiempo para trabajar? Your sentence is going to start the same way every time, right? ¿Qué sentido tiene que? So you don't even have to think about it. That part just comes out. It gives you some time, that split second, to think of that verb in the subjunctive, if you need it. Our verb here is buscar, which means to look for, and it's conjugated in the present subjunctive. Busque, busque. As you can see from our sample sentences, we can use this construction, ¿Qué sentido tiene?, to make complex sentences or simple ones. You have some options there. I think it's definitely something useful for your Spanish toolbox. Well, that's it for the lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.